ya tú sabes, de qué se trata.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate the opening of The Outsiders from the Other Side, our second exhibition of this 24-2025 season. And I'm so excited to have some of the outsider artists here and to get to introduce them to you all. Their amazing work is on display in the Harold J. Miossi Gallery. It's opening tonight and will be open through October 11th. And I was lucky enough to come upon the show kind of having it already been created. Seeing it, I saw no other option but to try and bring it up to San Luis Obispo because I thought it was so valuable and so important and offered such a unique perspective on something that is timely but has also been going on for a very, very long time. And so it was my pleasure to bring it up here and kind of be able to take this 2.0 show and bring it to Cuesta College and bring it to San Luis Obispo. So tonight we're going to have an artist panel. So we are not going to be doing the traditional artist talk where we have slides going on. Oh. If you all are constant viewers, you'll know this is my nemesis. I'm going to yell. We got you. So instead of a slideshow where the artist talks about all of their work, we're going to have a panel discussion discussing each other's works and topics around the works that are in the show and what the show is kind of about. There will be lots of time and there will be lots of space for you all to ask questions and chime in as well. So I'm going to introduce some of our panelists right now, and I'm going to ask, what's your name again? Nerida. Nerida? Okay, so we have a translator on the panel named Nerida for our artist Zaka, who speaks only Spanish, which we're so glad that he is here. Gerardo is one of our artists from originally from Ensenadas, but now hailing from near Atlanta, Georgia. And then we have Dada, who is our muralist and artist who's on display in there, and he lives in Tijuana, Mexico. And at the end there, this is Sean. Sean is the gallerist of Track 16. So thank you all for being here. It's really a pleasure. It's really a great time to, whenever I can get multiple artists together and sit you all down up here on stage, as uncomfortable as it is for you, it's a delight for me because I get to hear all these wonderful conversations. So without further ado, we have a video that kind of shows parts of Tijuana and the Tijuana art scene.
Yeah, I can tell a couple.
Yes, please. This is Gerardo.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for having us. The video we're just about to see was filmed in 2011 in Tijuana, and it was an independent project that came for us from Mexico City about the art and music scene in Tijuana in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. What happened was the Mexican president at the time had the brightest idea to declare war on the narcos, and that didn't go very well. So as a result of that, millions of Mexicans ended up dying, disappeared, and all kinds of atrocities were committed in Mexico, in big part thanks to the illegal smuggling of weapons made in the United States, so thank you very much. And the problem that we had at the border was it was out of control. Obviously, tourism stopped, it became a dead scene. There was a lot of businesses that just basically disappeared. They were on hold because there was so much violence in the city. It was, it was a very chaotic time, but also like the people that were creatives, the creatives had a response to those times, and they still like doing their thing, doing shows, doing music, and the scene came back alive during a really, really difficult time. And funny enough, even though I'm part of that scene, I was stuck in San Diego because I lost my green card in Mexico City, and I was divorcing, and I had child custody that I was about to lose. So it was a really, really hard time for myself in the United States, and trying to survive as an independent artist and having to pay a divorce that was close to $15,000 at the time when all this was happening. So it was bad for them, it was bad for me in a different way. But I can relate to that level of violence and bad stuff that was happening to anybody at the border at the time. So the video was released for MTV, and then it was a series that's called Rebel Music Mexico. It's available on Netflix. Whoever has a Netflix account can look at it at home. This is just a preview, but it will give you a really, really good idea of what our work is about, and kind of would put you in the space where, like, okay, this is how our life has been in Tijuana, and why do we work the way we work, and do we do the work that we do. So
great. All right, here we go.
The lights.
Tijuana is a border city, so the border influence, the border aesthetic, I think is so important. Like, everything is run down, everything is half-assed, everything is poorly made, dirty, polluted, corrupted.
Tijuana has always been pinpointed as having something special.
I'm from San Diego, so we used to go way before we were 18. It's awesome.
A lot of music here. Aquí las cosas de repente no se están, sino más bien están como en movimiento simplemente.
2 years ago, the situation in Tijuana was kind of bizarre.
Suddenly the city became very violent, and most of the clubs and places to go and play our music were shut down.
It was even dangerous just to go to the store, you know, you could be caught in the crossfire. It was basically a war zone.
Every day in the news and like blogs and stuff, you would be seeing so many people dead, and this would happen like in every neighborhood. It was a very apocalyptic time.
If you're an American and you're watching the news, you only heard of bad things happening in Tijuana. You know that so many people were getting killed.
All tourism fell down in Tijuana. Nobody was coming down.
The situation came back, but of course inspired us because it's our environment we were living in, and we have to express that.
We're rebellious and we refuse to lay down, you know.
We said, we have to do something, we have to play. We live playing music, you know. We're like just a bunch of electronic musicians just trying to improvise and come up with a unique sound.
There was this moment of eureka when they said, wait, I think we can make something of our own.
Vamos a incorporar todo eso en lo que estamos haciendo, con computadoras, con nuestra música, con nuestras raíces.
Justamente esto, pero ya con el ambiente de vamos a echar beat y vamos a echar sonido poderoso de sintetizadores, pero en la fiesta.
We can't stop. We gotta go out. We gotta mingle. We gotta drink. We gotta have fun. We have to make music.
We have to focus on the people of Tijuana.
So wait, we have something here. We have something that's we think it's unique. And it's seen as a sort of a renaissance.
What is that place with all the dolls' heads and all that crazy shit?
Actually, they could answer that question.
¿Qué es ese lugar donde están
Todos
todos
los
los
muñecos.
monos? Ajá, los muñecos.
Yo no conozco el lugar ese, pero sé que existe como es en la periferia de la ciudad también.
It's on the outskirts of the city. It's a very mysterious place where it's covered in dolls, and if you go there, they'll capture your soul. And you're more miserable there than you're here.
Lo que pasa es que en la periferia, a diferencia de aquí, La periferia son como zonas urbanas así más exclusivas. Allá la periferia es donde están los márgenes, donde está la autoconstrucción y las casas que están.
Okay. It's on the outskirts of Tijuana, but it's like the underdevelopment parts where there's like all this made up improvised homes. It's not really like a real part of the city. It's much more like an invasion of immigrants and just building houses like randomly.
He says it's not urban the way
It's
that
not,
it
it's
is
not
here.
developed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, why do they put all that stuff together? Like, these guys are standing, like, there are thousands of dolls' heads and all kinds of crazy stuff. That's not a neighborhood.
Well, it's going to be in the next 20 years.
Está preguntando que por qué les ocurre estar en un área así, pues.
Por la situación económica que muchas personas no pueden pagar, como al centro de la ciudad, un condominio, un departamento, una casa.
It's also because a lot of people can't afford to live in like in a condominium and a condo.
What?
Like they can't afford to live like in a condo. What they can afford to is to live in the outskirts of the city, so that's what they have.
But
And they make it
I guess the question is like, like there's housing out on this outskirts of town, but that the wild scenery of that detritus of piles of stuff, is it like a dump? Is it like a?
Is it an art installation?
Yeah.
No, well, it's an art installation, but it's like a slum where people live and just made like, it's like a homeless encampment, like what we have here in California in some parts.
Where
Nobody wants to
got
talk about it,
decorated?
but it also happens in Tijuana on the outskirts of the city. It just basically people invade and they just improvise and find shelter.
I mean, in San Luis, we have a chewing gum wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That thing is unbelievable.
Right.
Lo que pasa es que también hay una cultura del reciclaje, del reutilizar muchos materiales. Muchas de las casas que se construyeron en la periferia en los 90s, si quieres tratar de eso.
Sí. He was saying that.
Desde que mucho de lo que es de la autoconstrucción
A lot of what's in the outskirts that's constructed was constructed in the 90s.
era mucho del material que iba de Estados Unidos a México,
And it's a lot of stuff that came from the United States and was brought to Mexico.
que eran unas puertas de garage de madera.
And it was like doors that are from garages here in the United States, and sí, como me estás
Sí.
explicando. And then were used to make walls,
Oh, wow.
to make homes.
Okay.
That's what they used. Was the trash that we got rid of here.
Ajá. Entonces mucha gente no tenía como para construirse una casa inmediatamente y levantaban 4 puertos de garage, le hacían un techo y de repente ya tienes una habitación.
And to make a home, to make a room, they would use those doors as walls, and that was their makeshift home.
Y muchos eran así como en las laderas donde se iban a vivir, de los cerros, y hacían como muros de contención con llantas y tierra.
What he's telling us, Tijuana is kind of like San Francisco, that there's a lot of hills and all our canyons and stuff, but you know, San Francisco's really nice, right? But Tijuana is like in the middle of hills and some of them are falling apart and every time there's a quake, crumbles, right? So people use tires, car tires, and just, since they dump the tires from the United States into Mexico, so there's tons of tires everywhere. So people just put sand in there, just build walls and start building improvised homes in between the canyons, and that's how that type of architecture comes to life. You know?
He's saying that the culture is, the big part of a culture is recycling. So
Yeah.
that's what they do, is they take things that we don't use here anymore.
Repurposing.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, and making a home from it.
And then that's why you see like those piles of little like toys,
Yeah.
because maybe they can like sell it in the flea market, or they can like do something with them, you know, and yeah, it's very you can look at like as a weird thing, but for me it's like, oh, it's another pile of
Yeah, we all have those in our houses.
like toys. Like toys
It's
and
like
a
a
pile of
symbol
toys.
of heaven.
Yeah.
You know, like, you go there, like, your pallet or something, like,
Yeah.
I'll take a dozen dolls' heads and, you know,
Yeah.
500.
It's like IKEA for the poor, right?
Que es como que si pudieras ir ahí y pedir, dame 10 muñecas así que se miran.
Ajá. Lo que pasa es que también mucho de ese producto cruza de aquí hacia allá.
It's just,
O sea, lo que donan en los tiendas de salvage.
oh, yeah.
O sea, mucha gente de México compra y pone puestos
Oh,
que se llaman tianguis
ajá.
y ahí se venden, ¿no?
it's like a flea market.
Right, yeah. So he's saying that people will buy things that are salvaged from here, and they'll put their own posts, like a flea market if you've ever been to one, and things that we don't want here, they'll sell, obviously to make some money, or even just find another purpose for it. But yeah.
Por eso nos llegan muchos
But
juguetes.
you get a lot of toys.
Yeah, and it's like a sense of surviving, like getting a lot of like material to make money with or to build something with. That's why it's almost like a recycling center, You're gonna see if you don't know like Zacaria's work, he works with almost like with recycled materials, and that's how lots of things in Tijuana are made, Well, since the migration is like heavy, like it's non-stopping, there's a lot of people like trying to make a living or trying to survive with the flow of the city, that they have to adapt to recycling materials so they can like live like over there,
Is it coming mostly just from Southern California, or is it like from all of the things that people are dropping off?
Sí,
Yeah.
sí,
I think
desde
LA to San
todo.
Yeah, everything.
Southern California
Todo.
specifically. Yeah.
Era lo que hablábamos de que hay como o sea, mi trabajo tiene que ver también con eso, ¿no?
That's what he was talking about, that his work has a lot to do with that.
De material que viene y va.
Of
O sea,
material that comes and goes.
hay muchas maquiladoras en Tijuana que las pantallas planas, lo que antes eran los monitores televisiones, se producían allá, pero se vendían aquí. Ya cuando se desechaban, regresaban a Tijuana. Entonces hay un intercambio de mercancías y productos así enorme, ¿no?
Okay, so what he's saying is that, for example, in Tijuana, all the maquiladoras, which are the factories where they can no longer exist in the United States because safety regulations, because wages, because environmental impact. There's a number of things why the factories cannot be in the United States anymore, right? So what do? Send them over, push them to the border, and then Tijuana becomes a large, like big screen manufacturing plants everywhere that, anybody from South America is getting jobs at the maquiladora. It's a big promise that you can't make it to the United States. You get stuck in Tijuana, you get a job at putting TV screens together. So once the TV screens are done, they're sent back to the United States, but there's a lot of residues. There's a lot of industrial waste that stays in the city and it's up in a landfill or somewhere. And he likes to go for walks, and every time he goes for a walk, he's just like picking stuff from wherever he goes, and that's what he finds interesting for his materials. And he just puts it back together gracefully in the sculpture that he creates. So that's how part of his work comes about. But also, we all recycle, we all repurpose without even thinking, oh, it's hip to repurpose something. No, it's just born out of necessity that we have these things because our parents grew up, some sort of poverty. You guys had the recession. We had similar crisis in Mexico that forced people to repurpose things, and that emotion, that feeling, and that necessity got passed on from generation that, hey, find a different use for that, don't throw it away. But I think we exceeded that. Just like, we're overdoing it to this point, right?
Yeah, he makes a point to talk about how things are made in Mexico. They have the plants, the manufacturing plants. Then those new things come to the States, and then we don't use those things anymore, so it goes back to Mexico, and there's that flow of in between, and how they shows that in his art as well.
I got a question.
And other backs.
Another book.
The video is talking about this big increase of gang violence and tourism dropped away, and then at some point there was this pushing back by the artists and musicians to bring some light to everything. I'm just wondering, has the vibe changed somewhat in Tijuana, or is the gang stuff still happening?
Okay, I would like to respond to this.
Go for it. Yeah, yeah.
Well, what happened specifically in the video, and I said that at the beginning of the session, that the Mexican president at the time decided to declare open war to the drug trafficking people, right? He could not make peace with them. And there's like retaliation from the different cartel gangs in Mexico at the time. That was 2006, the beginning of 2006 until 2009 was really like a bloodbath everywhere. So the video that we just watched has to deal with that time, and the testimonies of all the artists were just talking about the time after that. So there's still, unfortunately, still drug problems. There's still like a big production of, you name it, like marijuana, cocaine, and importing from South America, making new drugs, like crystal meth, which meth was pushed from the United States, from the Hell Angel in the 60s, and then in the 80s became a huge thing. In some parts of Mexico, in the 90s became a huge problem, and 2000 was out of control, right? So, and that's a problem we've been dealing with. Unfortunately, meth has taken over for most of the country, and there's like new drugs into the market. And yeah, there's still like drug cartels. You know, some states are better than others when it comes to being safer, and some of them unfortunately are violent, especially the border region. We have Tijuana, that is probably the busiest border crossing town, and then we have Chihuahua, we have El Paso in Texas, and then Ciudad Juarez, which is like really, really intense, and there's always like violence of some sort. And I guess the violence goes where the resources are, you know, where the drugs is being produced, right? But it's always in the border region when the problem is really, really intense. As far as what's going on in Tijuana, I think they can tell you better than I, you know, what's going on with violence and creativity.
Ahora en este momento, pues, en este momento, pues sí hay sigue habiendo la violencia, pero no como en esos años, ¿no?
He's saying that now at this time, there's obviously still violence, but like he was saying, it not like it was back then, not like how you see in that video of him talking about it being like that.
Y tiene que ver mucho como con la sobrepoblación. La ciudad nunca se diseñó, ¿no?
He says it has a lot to do obviously with the overpopulation. The city was never built to be that populated.
Y se ha ido así como improvisando el crecimiento. Ahora en este momento están construyendo muchos edificios.
And the growth has had to be improvised, and what you see now to improvise that is they make a lot of tall buildings, a lot of built buildings.
Y muchos residentes de San Diego se están yendo a vivir a Tijuana porque no pueden pagar un departamento.
And a lot of residents from San Diego are moving to Tijuana because they can't afford to live in San Diego anymore.
And if they're moving to Tijuana, it's because they feel safe there. You know, there's lots of spaces, cultural and cultural wise, or like if you like to drink a beer or wine or whatever, there's really nice, cool places. It's safe, and you don't even feel like it doesn't even feel like a violent city like it used to, like before, like 2008, you know. But yeah, it's safe.
So is the art scene thriving now?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It hasn't stopped. So there has been like gaps where they had an art collector that popped out of nowhere and start buying their work, and it helped them out tremendously. And so this art patron or buyer start collecting their work, and everybody benefit from it because now they have like extra funding coming their way. And so that's something that hasn't happened. And for us, it's really rewarding to be paid for what we do. When it comes to the creative energy, it's always been there. Like I don't even think that it has been a year that has been more creative than others. But also thanks to the Norte Collective, which is like a group of musicians, it has put attention into the Tijuana creatives. And the fact that NTV decided to invest and make it a show about what we do, it was huge for us. But there has been some years that has been better than others when it comes to creativity.
So I see questions in the back. I'm going to ask one question first, and then I'll get to both of you. I promise. Because I'm greedy, and I want to know what these people think. So much of the show is premised around this idea of the border, of this existing on either side of the border or on both sides of the border. I want to know how you all would define the culture of Tijuana, of TJ, with relationship to that, because it seems like, and Dada spoke to the students earlier, and he said this, that it's not exactly Mexico, and it's not exactly the United States. It's like it's its own
limbo
place, right? And it seems to me that the culture fluctuates so constantly that I'd be really interested to talk about what that is to you, how you all see that, and how you find that as artists or within your work too.
I think the name of the show, speak for itself, because it fits so well, because of how my personal feeling about how I live the region, because it's not like I said yesterday with the students, I don't feel Mexican enough or American enough. I'm from Tijuana, and Tijuana is its own universe, and even in Tijuana, I feel like an outsider because of how the city is developing so fast, and it's like a little monster, Yeah, it's like a little monster. Suddenly it pops a building right here that you haven't seen before, and suddenly there's a pile of tires over in an empty lot, and it's crazy that you feel almost like an outsider, And I think that's if you see the work of every artist, we have something in common with that vision, lots of layers, lots of texture, lots of color, and it goes around there, it's changing, it's evolving, it's for good or bad, that's my vision.
Sí, un poco, a ver.
Porque en tu arte, ¿cómo tú expresas, pues, qué es Tijuana para ti?
Okay.
¿Cómo tú le explicarías a alguien?
Okay, yo mi trabajo lo explicaría como el arte de la incertidumbre.
He's saying that in his art, he explains it like uncertainty.
Como la incertidumbre es algo que no sabes qué va a pasar mañana, qué va a pasar después.
What you don't know what's going to happen today or tomorrow.
Y eso genera también como estar en un estado inestable, como volátil.
Being in a state of an unstable state.
Y desde ahí creo que es una característica que nosotros percibimos en la ciudad. La ciudad también es un poco así, ¿no?
And that's a characteristic that you would kind of see, I guess, in the city, that you don't really know what's going to happen. It's very uncertain. It's like you're in a limbo. Don't know what's going to happen today or tomorrow.
Porque está creciendo, se está moviendo todo el tiempo.
It's growing, it's changing all the time.
Y mi trabajo un poco de las esculturas tienen como intento de movimiento, porque me han dicho, bueno.
In his work, in his sculptures, you can see that there's kind of like an intent to move. You can imagine them moving.
Well, you can because you're in Tijuana. It's like whoever has grass of border on a Monday morning, and you're stuck. Well, that's the sculptures that he does, right? You're just stuck, looking weird.
Sí, incluso me han sugerido que porque no las hago que se muevan, les explico que me interesa más como que la imaginación del espectador puede hacer que se muevan.
That people have asked him, why doesn't he make his sculptures move? And he says he prefers that people interpret what that movement would be in his sculptures.
Pero también esto de las esculturas que tienen patas tiene que ver con este flujo de materiales, con este flujo de personas, con este intercambio que hay entre Tijuana y San Diego.
Yeah, and that especially with he has a lot of feet on a lot of his sculptures, and that kind of represents the flow that there is between Mexico or Tijuana and San Diego, and the flow of things and the movement of how things go back and forth.
So has he ever thought of making kinetic art that actually moves?
No.
Across the border by itself.
Más bien que la mente de las personas los mueva.
That your mind moves it.
Were you all born there? In Tijuana?
Oh,
Were
hold
you all
on.
born in Tijuana?
We'll get this one, then we'll get the two in the back, I promise. So, is everybody from Tijuana? That's what the question is.
Zach was born.
Yo soy de Guadalajara, el interior
Yeah.
del
Yeah.
sur del país, pero llegué a Tijuana como en el 70, son ¿qué? 40, como 40 y algo de años.
Yeah, he's from
Guadalajara.
Guadalajara, which is in the south, and then in the 70s he moved to Tijuana, so it's been about 40 years.
I was born in Ensenada, but I had a lot of girlfriends in Tijuana. Well, I went to school there, and actually my creative times started in the 90s because I was really isolated in Ensenada. So I went to college. I went for graphic design, which I didn't finish because we ran out of money and there was no way to get a grant, so I decided to. But during that time, I used to like punk rock, the 80s and stuff, and then the industrial music was becoming a thing and really strong, and the people I met when I was in college, they were really into like industrial music, and it was really interesting for me at the time. And they just had a scene. Everybody was making like homemade magazines, like scenes and radio shows and like illegal parties and all that kind of stuff. And I was really drawn to the cultural scene of Tijuana, and Ensenada was just boring as hell for me. And I guess I became an artist from Tijuana just because criminal affiliation, right? And also, Tijuana had a strong graffiti scene, and also they had a skate park. So for me, that was just the whole package, music, skateboarding, and all that stuff. Well, Ensenada was just boring, and so I guess I decided to, they adopted me.
He's adopted to Tijuana.
Yeah.
And Dada?
Yes, I was born and spoiled in Tijuana.
And so like, was it street art before stenciling, like for public art, like public art? It was yeah. I studied unsanctioned into some sanctioned.
Yeah. I went to the university. I studied graphic design to to try to make a living out of it, but I didn't feel comfortable sitting for 8 or more hours at the desk looking at that computer. I'm so I'm restless, and that's why I earn a living doing this kind of work and other things, and I'm born in Tijuana. My parents aren't from Tijuana. My parents are from Jalisco and from Michoacan, and they're also migrants, It's interesting what happens in Tijuana because there's not much people that set roots over there because of most of the people look Tijuana as a trampoline, to go to another.
Was that your parents' intention?
No, actually, no. My parents were teachers, and they were teachers for 40 years in a university in TJ, and they were some of the first generation of people who stay there and raise their family there, and but it's interesting that there's not much of those families raised there, and it's almost, I was thinking that Tijuana is almost like an airport. There's people coming in and going out of there that nobody sets roots to an airport, right? You can define what kind of culture does an airport have, and that's how I see Tijuana. That's why it's so weird, and nobody says like that proudly as me, I'm from Tijuana, I say it, and I can say it through my work.
All right, let's get the questions in the back. Yeah, go ahead.
I had heard that it took some effort to get the works that are in the gallery to the gallery, like across the border.
Oh, that's Sean.
Can you speak a bit about the process of
Well, I don't have, yeah, it wasn't easy, but it actually was a great day. So like, if I go backwards, like, it must have been like 3 years ago, I agreed to be, I had somebody I knew was getting an artwork delivered that had been coming from Oaxaca, and is that, yeah, I think that's kind of where it was, and so that I agreed to be like, oh, you're out of town, they can drop the work off here. So 2 people were coming over the border, and the work had been somehow got to Tijuana, and then these 2 artists got like, you know, then it's like, find more people to help out. They drove this artwork to Track 16, and I met them both, and they dropped off the work, and then one of them is Damaris, who helped me, who I co-organized the show with. So we just kept in touch, and I started following what she was making, and but then I started to notice she was really like sharing a lot of the work by people she admired and knew and were working and doing things with. And so at some point I just floated, like, do you want to do a show? So I guess I'm getting into the background of the show. A long-winded thing. Anyway, so then she was into it, and so she just kept showing me lots of different artists, and I would say, yeah, love this, or maybe not that, but this, and then, but at some point we needed to go and visit, and so there was, so one of the visits we visited Zach's studio, we visited Dada, and we went and visited Marielle and did a studio visit with, she wasn't even there, but we visited with her brother. We saw all these studios, we met Tony, and so we filled up the car, my like, you know, very SoCal Prius, with all the artwork, and got, you know, as much as we could. We couldn't bring Marielle's big sculpture because it was too big for my car, but there was a lot of the work. And we really packed it in, and then we had to get over the border, and Damaris was coming with me over the border because we were going to visit the De La Torre brothers, who are now based more San Diego, just on the other side of the border. She came with me, and it was like 2.5 hours waiting, kind of going through the border thing, you know, getting on, you know, which is its own experience. But at the border, we did have to go through answer a bunch of questions at the border, and like, you know, what's your business? What are you doing? And so the border patrol agent was like, I was like, well, he's like, what is that? And he was pointing at Zach's sculptures. And he's like, I was like, oh, it's for an art show. And he's like, you know, it's assemblage, so it's like, that's art? And he gets really curious. He's like looking, he's got his flashlight in the back, like, but it's this, and this is like, is it like, it's like glued together? And so he actually had a good time with a lot of follow-up questions, because it's not what he would normally be questioning people about at the border. So we weren't sure if there was going to be trouble with like, oh, well, what's it worth, or anything like that. So so we just were able to just get through. But it wasn't too bad. But it was an adventure for the day, for sure.
I feel like that's the way that they were able to get the majority of the artwork across the border was the only way that it could have worked smoothly, is someone like actually just like trucking it themselves across. Like, there's no way you could get it on like a shipper or anybody like who is you know, like official to do it, because then you're going to end up in customs, and you're going to end up all sorts of complications. We had additional work added to this show too, because we have a couple of artists replacing some other artists who aren't in the show, and it was basically the same thing. We set it all
forgot
up.
about that portion of the story.
And
maybe that was the late. Maybe that was even what she had heard.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And they walked. They picked up a couple people picked up the artwork in Tijuana, and they walked through like the spinny gates across the border and like handed it to somebody else.
Yeah, so I sent my daughter and her boyfriend for a day trip again in the Prius down to like a shopping mall.
Yeah.
Right at the border, and Damaris, like, they just literally met up at the Starbucks, handed off the artwork, and then she just walked back over the border, and they drove up, and then kind of gathered up with the other artworks friends at Track 16,
Yeah.
and then Tim came down to get it.
So it has to be relatively, you know, not clandestine, but just not high profile to like kind of make it work. Yeah, it's like who does this? Like you're handing off artwork in a parking lot at the Starbucks. You're like, hey, don't shh. And it's in like plastic bags, and you know, it's kind of made to not look very valuable, you know, on purpose, not for anybody in Tijuana, but really to get across the border and to make people not ask questions. Yeah. Okay. Was there one more question in the back there?
Yeah. I'm wondering what your practice looks like within your communities, and like how you balance exporting your art kind of to American audiences versus for your community.
Anybody?
Anybody?
Anyone? Like, I feel like you all have unique experiences with this because you all come from unique kind of spaces. So why don't you go first?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of a fine artist, but also have like a background in music and skateboarding. So I've been doing stuff on the street, like the unsolicited beautification of the environment. And it has become a thing, right? When I was growing up in the 70s, we had a lot of Mexican gang cholos, you know, like the low riders and all that. But they had aesthetic, and especially the graffiti, and I was really, really interested in the lettering. I mean, I was not interested in crime, but I was very drawn to the lettering. I was 5 or 6, and then it's like, oh, like this really weird writing on the walls, and I was really drawn to that. And when I got into skateboarding in the late 70s, there was also like graffiti tied to the skateboard scene, even in Mexico. Like in Southern California, it's not even an issue, but in Mexico, skateboarding had a huge impact because Pepsi was like pushing skateboarding. And it was a thing, right? And surf and all that stuff. Well, I kind of grew up with that. So what was I going to say? So part of me is, it's like the street art that has been a thing for me. And then, you know, I went to school for graphic design, kind of a fine artist. And I just tried to survive using the two, right? There's the spiritual side of me that wants to do art and just communicate, leave a legacy to the rest of the world. But I'm also trying to pay rent and have some medical insurance of some sort through graphic design, you know. But everybody's a graphic designer, and you talk to people, and anybody can put a poster together, right? But I'm just giving my flavor, my soul, my identity to a particular type of design that I do with the elements and typography and the kind of vibe that I throw into, just so I can separate myself with the rest of the designers and have it as sort of identity. And you know, that's how it works for me, you know.
No entendí muy bien la pregunta.
Repeat the question. So, what is your practice inside of your community in Tijuana, and then how do you feel? What is it like to be exporting what you make to the United States? We had a question like this earlier.
Pues el impacto, o sea, la interacción que yo puedo tener como con la comunidad.
The interaction that he has with this community.
De mi ciudad ha sido hacer como intervenciones en el espacio público.
Is to do like interventions in like the public community.
Y que son como efímeras también, como temporales, porque duran lo que la gente permite que estén ahí, ¿no?
And it's temporary, it's however people allow it to be there for.
Pero un tipo sí estoy haciendo mucha arte instalación y arte intervención como una manera de devolver un poco lo que la ciudad me ha dado, ¿no?
Okay, yeah. He was saying, sorry, I was going to say that in Spanish. That it's his way of kind of giving back what he feels the community has given to him, what the city's given to him. So he's done that through doing art installations and interventions and whatnot.
Ajá, que eran intervenciones que de repente aparecían, las dejaba ahí y digo, de repente alguien las encontraba y le gustaban o no.
Yeah, it was art that he would make and just leave there, and just for anyone to go and enjoy and to see and interpret.
Digo, eso es así como lo que yo siento que ha aportado así como a la comunidad.
That's how he feels he's given back to his community.
y tal vez algunos talleres que dimos en comunidades o en colonias con niños.
Oh, for like children.
Es así como digo, lo que hago y que creo que ha afectado un poco, ha sido de esa manera.
He feels it's made an impact in that way for him, the way he's done it at least.
¿Y cuál es la otra? Ya, que cómo me sentía de exponer aquí mi trabajo, pues contento, muy contento y agradecido, ¿no?
He feels really thankful, really happy that he's been able to bring his art to the States.
Por la recepción y el interés por el trabajo que hacemos.
Yeah, to see the interest in what he's done and what it means.
Lo que él dijo.
Same.
I have participated in some projects directly with some communities. Like I have participated in doing workshops with orphaned children, and it's really like rewarding, like trying to let them know what we do and how we do it, and so they can like imbue like their space or where they live, their community, and I'm also so grateful for Sean and for Tim to make it possible to bring us here and to let us show our work. And it's as rewarding as giving a workshop to some people over there who needs that to like make their community more beautiful, you know? And it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us. So I think that the interesting thing, we had this question kind of come up earlier too. I think what drew me to this, the original show at Track 16, while we see a lot of interest for better or for worse, in showing diverse, quote unquote, artwork within galleries, as a way of either making the gallery seem like its interest in diversity or actually pushing an idea of diversity forward. The show in Track 16, what drew me in originally with it was that it was designed and kind of pushed forward by the artists themselves. There wasn't kind of this feeling of a harvesting, of a going down and scooping people out of Tijuana and bringing them up here as like an oddity and as an othering of these people. This was artist driven, pushing their culture within their own creative sense up to Los Angeles originally and now up to SLO. And at least the way that we organized it, and I know the way that Sean organized it, it was we let the artists really kind of drive the bus, and that's the way that the gallery works here. They were able to make a lot of decisions about how things were produced and why things were the way they were, and that was the only way that we felt comfortable kind of operating with it. I'm sure that was the same way with you and Demerits.
Early on in the conversations, we were looking at a lot of different work, and one of the things that Damaris said to me that I completely really liked as an operating goal was that she said, I don't want it to be like one thing. I don't want this show to be one thing. And I kind of, at first I wasn't sure what she meant, and so I kind of gave her an example. She said, yeah. So I was like, so do you mean you don't want it to be like the punks of Tijuana or the street artists of Tijuana or the MFA students of Tijuana? She was like, yeah, exactly. Like I want it to, like, cause it doesn't feel like that down there. It feels like a lot of different things going on all at once. And so to have a lot of different artists, cause they all, even if they are different, there's a big conversation going on between all the different kinds of sculptors and street artists. And so she just felt really adamant about it. And anytime I get to work with somebody on organizing something like that, when they have a strong opinion like that, it means a lot. Like it's great when you have some touchstones to work from, that you feel like this is one of our bedrocks of the show.
Okay, so we're running low on time, so we have one more question.
Oh, he
Guillermo?
answered it
Oh, you did?
already.
We have time for one more question. If anybody wants to ask it, make it a good one.
I have like 40, but I'll see if I can figure this out.
You could ask one long question with 40
I'm
cards.
gonna ask one long question with it. Okay, for me, children and kids learning art and learning how to create, to express themselves through emotions, through whatever, that it's very, very important. So I'm so happy to hear you say that you're working with kids, because that's where it all starts, and it is so helpful to work with kids who are at risk, who have violence, who have horrible things happen to them, and it helps get those feelings out. So we do that here, maybe not right here, but I'm just happy you guys are here, and I'm so grateful that we get
should
to
do it
meet you
here.
in our painting class.
We should do it here.
Pardon?
We should do it here.
Yes. And I want to come to
It's
Tijuana
lovely.
and work with you. I'd love to do that with the kids down there.
Did you have a question too?
Tim, I just.
Okay.
We
appreciate it.
asking about the kids.
Yeah. Okay, we have one last question right here.
The explanation, or like the intro about the slime landing, I have a lot of curiosity about the city being so big and so unstable. It almost sounded like Black Mirror, like the show on Netflix. So like, do you feel like your art is more optimistic or pessimistic? Where like you get do you see inspiration in the optimistic view of Tijuana, or the pessimistic? Just so much. There's a lot going on, in both. It's like a duality city. So I'm just wondering where your guys' inspiration comes from, or if there's.
I think it's both. It's like the yin yang,
Yeah, the reference you had mentioned, the Black Mirror.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, I think it's both. Yeah, we don't. Well, I don't try to hide anything, I can embrace the good stuff and the bad stuff also, because there isn't one without another, for me, I guess.
Creo que la mayor parte de al menos de los artistas que conozco, hemos como,
Yeah, the artist that he knows, he feels that.
Hemos como asimilado esta parte como violenta, oscura de la ciudad.
They've seen the violent part.
Y la otra, ¿no? Que nos da así como, nos abre las posibilidades como para crear cosas también. Pero sin dejar de desconectarnos o desconocer esta parte oscura del lado oscuro de la ciudad, de nosotros mismos.
That they see the dark, but they also see the light, the things that brings them opportunity. But although they love to see that they don't ever want to lose sight of that dark part as well, because that also brings them inspiration.
Yeah, guys stay connected. Like it stays connected.
Yeah, they always wants to stay connected to that.
As for me, well, I'm a Libra, but my moon is in Scorpio, so I have a dark side. For whoever is interested in astrology, it's not a science, but it kind of makes sense to the story I'm going to tell you guys. Well, I used to work with the guy that used to do the Bay poster. I spent 4 years working with him. So during that time, I was working on my own projects. I was living in San Diego, but going to Tijuana a lot, and my friends were doing art and music. So at that time, I decided to make a stencil of a political candidate that was assassinated in Tijuana. It was kind of like our version of JFK. Colosio was assassinated not too far from the border, and it was a huge deal in Mexico. It escalated a wave of violence through the 90s, and like a presidential candidate being assassinated, effectively. Not like the one we had. Right, so if you want to get a job done, go to Tijuana. Anyways, so Colosio was assassinated brutally, right? And that was in '94, and it was shocking, it was ridiculous, right? And it just a shock, and the absurd part of it kind of made me do a stencil, right? And it was never my intention to make it a thing, right? Like a stencil graffiti was coming out to be a thing. And for me, like that wave of violence. I was not promoting violence by any sort, or I was not affiliated to the party. Like, I don't agree with it's a Mexican Republican Party. Like, hell no. So for me, it was just making a mockery of how unsafe we are. You know, criminals get away with it. There's impunity, there's corruption, and all kinds of stuff. And for me as an artist, I was just trying to put out like, hey, you know, my life is not more or less important than this guy's life, and there's nothing being done about it, right? So I felt the need through the stencil work just to make an open call, right? Colosio was assassinated. He was running for president. His own party killed him. So what is going to happen to us, right? And so that Black Mirror thing that you're talking about, how dark the city, Tijuana can be as dark as it can be. Like, there's no question about it. How are we going to respond to that, right? For me, it has to be fine, balance in the middle, right? It's like, some people buy my paintings and have them at their house. Like, oh, that guy was shot. You know, like, why do you want to have it on your wall? Like, some people do, you know, fine. But for me, it was just to make an impact in a generation that was getting to know street art. You know, I was very lucky to work with the guy from Obey Giant. And just to be able to connect with other artists and just to start filtering like the new things that were coming through the mainstream, right? I get to hear about Banks in the 2000, 2001, and I was on his mailing list, and so I have a little connection with him. But I anticipated a lot of things that were coming up, and I was filtering to Tijuana and then Mexico City and just trying to get people into what was coming, right? It was not my intention to put myself like, yeah, I want to be the main guy. It was much more like the voice of a generation that was dragging something, and street art kind of became a thing. It became like the name of the folder where everybody's throwing the new stuff in. So that's what happened, and now I'm trying to make a living out of it.
All right. So thank you so much, everybody. Now, just wait a second. I'm going to do my thank yous. I have to do these thank yous. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the Harold J. Miossi Foundation for making the gallery possible and endowing us with the ability to bring artists like this to Cuesta, to have them in contact with our students, to have them be able to come and speak with you, and to be able to put on these amazing shows. Thank you, Cuesta College, for housing the Harold J. Miossi Art Gallery and making all this possible as well. I want to thank Bo Burnham and Magnolia Stork. They are the other two parts of the gallery team here at Cuesta. We're a three-person team that make all these shows possible. They do amazing work, and they work way more than they should. This show is open from now until October 11th. Please tell your friends, come back and see it again. It is an amazing show, and once it's gone, it's gone. So,
and we're gone.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming. The other artists who helped to curate this show, Demerits, will be here in September. We will be sending you out. If you're not part of our mailing list, sign up in the gallery. We'll be sending out emails about that as well. So thank you so much. The gallery is still open. You can go back over there.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Tim. And Sean. Thank you guys.
Great. All right. So this is the reporter from KCBX who I